Check. Shit. Fuck, where'd it go?
This video, don't just watch it, but if you want the access to exclusive content, then you have to head to AO. Constantly smeared by Republicans. He was falsely accused of being a Muslimist from Africa. You literally are a Muslim socialist from Africa.
They wanted it, they got it.
They wanted it. The odds are stacked against you based on being a Muslim socialist from Africa, and yet you've come out on top in the primary vote. You're leading in the polls. You're leading in some polls with Jewish voters as well. I know we're not supposed to talk about identity politics these days, but how much will winning in November, you winning and becoming mayor, how much will that change the way America looks at immigrants and Muslims?
You know, I can't predict the meaning for this country at large, but I can tell you that I have been immensely moved just by seeing what it means to so many across this city, and especially the notion amongst youngest New Yorkers that they could be anything, because there has been a long time in our city politics where many, whether Muslim or South Asian or many of other immigrant backgrounds, if they desire a job in city politics, if they want to work in City Hall, they're often made to feel as if the only job they could have is one that has their religious or racial identity in the title of the job.
Yeah.
That's as far as you can go. And what we're showing in this city is that what Muslims want and deserve is just what every other New Yorker wants and deserves.
Yeah.
Respect and dignity. And these are the things that are possible for each and every New Yorker if we just have a leader who's willing to deliver on that.
One thing you and I have in common is that Donald Trump's allies, Laura Loomer in my case, Andy Ogles in your case, have publicly called for us to be denaturalized and deported. We can laugh about the ridiculousness of this rhetoric, but how dangerous is it that it's now become normalized on the right? I mean, I don't remember it in Trump's first term to just look at any foreigner and go, deport them.
It is very dangerous. It's dangerous because it is the foundation of dehumanization, is to, through every which way...
You're not a real American.
Yeah, you're not a real American. You're an other. You are someone who does not belong here. And this is... You cannot separate that kind of an approach from these kinds of actions that we hear of in the voicemail that are being threatened.
Yeah.
And I think it is also what so many of us have come to expect in being in public life, and yet that does not make it any more acceptable. And I mean, even the basic fact of me eating biryani with my hands is something that outrages Republican congressmen.
It outrages a Republican congressman whose father-in-law, I should point out, is Dinesh D'Souza, an Indian immigrant who I'm pretty sure has eaten rice with his hands at some point.
I did not even put the two and two together.
Yes. The general election is just over a month away.
Which crazy.
Got the
I remember
trifecta
that.
of state endorsement.
They had fucking like Fox News and right-wing slop influencers were taking the video of Zohran just eating his fucking food and trying to use it as like a smear. These people are fucking disgusting low lives.
From New York, Kathy Hochul, State Assembly Speaker Carl Heastie, and New York State Senate Majority Leader Andrea Stewart Cousins. Yet Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, who falsely claimed that you talked about global jihad and then she had to privately apologize to you, she still hasn't endorsed you. Neither has House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer. They keep saying they're going to have more meetings with you. I don't know how many meetings you need to have with Chuck Schumer. I don't know what's going on in the previous ones. And yet these are the same Democratic politicians who push vote blue no matter who. Why is it vote blue no matter who, but a little asterisk caveat, except Zohran Mamdani?
Sam, you're not down with eating with your hands, my guy? What's wrong with eating with your hands? I do it. You do it. You ever had a sandwich? Like, what are you talking about?
You know, I can tell you that for most New Yorkers who have been engaging with this race, we've seen them join this coalition since the primary. And I think there are many of whom who have, joined this coalition as Democrats, and they've joined it because they're proud to support the Democratic nominee in the general election. But what I've also found is that beyond this...
What's disgusting about it? You eat with your hands all the time. What are you talking about? Go eat a sandwich with a spoon. Like,
Party ideology, there is a deep desire for an affordability agenda. And that extends to Republicans, it extends to independent voters, it extends to unaffiliated voters. And it extends to them because of the fact that your landlord does not care about your politics on the first of the month. You have to pay your rent. The MTA does not care politics when you...
why does it matter? It's just cultural customs. You know, it's just about where you were born and where there's no like law of the universe that says you have to eat rice with a fucking spoon or you have to eat a sandwich, with your hands or with a fork or with a knife or whatever. It's just your cultural programming. So just get over your cultural programming and try to look at it from like a universal perspective and get out of your bubble. It's not that difficult.
You have $2.90 to ride the slowest buses in the country.
Yeah.
And the city doesn't care your politics when you have to pay $25,000 a year for childcare. And so I've found that as much as there is this focus on party politics, that what I've found from New Yorkers is a focus on whether their city can actually be affordable.
No, I understand that. And I was going to say, do you even need their endorsements?
You know, I welcome any and all endorsements, and I'm also very excited about the campaign that we've built.
Okay.
And the fact that right now...
What are you talking about? It's not Western culture. What they do in their homeland is their beer. What are you even talking about? What do you mean? And by the way, the fact that the Democratic Party can't get around to endorsing Mamdani, Hakeem Jeffries, pussy, what's his name? Chuck Schumer, get the fuck out. Like it's time to move on. Like Mamdani is going to be the future, and they are just holding on to their last gasps of like pathetic, wishy-washy power. Absolutely can't wait for Mamdani to win and get in there. What are you saying? They can eat with their hands in Pakistan. I mean, first of all, they're talking about Indian culture. Second of all, Mamdani is not from he's not from Pakistan. So I don't know what you're talking about. He's born in Uganda.
We died on Staten Island in leading that race across a citywide poll. And what we see is that the ceilings that have been imposed on us time and time again, you know, whether it was in this very interview where you thought that 1% was
that was
the ceiling.
in my head. I never said you couldn't win. I just thought it.
Here we are.
But I noticed you didn't answer my question. Why is there an asterisk on? I mean, AOC's made this point. She's like, this is very dangerous to the Democratic Party. If you tell everyone, whenever it's a centrist candidate, you got to get behind them. But when it's a progressive, you don't.
Damn, just out of curiosity, where are you from? Like, where were your parents from originally?
Centrist on the president. A lot of progressives say, well, why should we? You guys never endorsed Zohran. That is dangerous, is it not?
Look,
to have a double standard when it comes to endorsements?
I think what New Yorkers are looking for is consistency, and I'm trying to show that in my politics and in my campaign.
I get it. You're saving your best stuff for your next Chuck Schumer meeting. On Chuck Schumer, 62% of Democratic voters say they want new leaders. I wrote a piece recently saying Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries, they got to go. They don't have the stomach for this fight. They're busy writing sternly worded letters at a time when fascism is at the door. Do you agree with 62% of Democratic voters who say the Democrats need new leadership?
I think what we need is to fight. And what I mean by that is that too often our response to an authoritarian administration is...
Okay, so Germany, Italy, did you say Titaly? Jesus Christ, man. Pure European roots. Okay, so you're not native born American either, or you're not of native. None of us are. I mean, so I don't understand what your gripe is with somebody coming from somewhere else. Oh, I know it is because he's brown and because he looks different than you. Is that what it is? And if that's what it is, then you're part of the problem. Sorry, buddy.
Seek to accept the terms of their debate. And not only do we not push back sufficiently, we don't also have an affirmative vision of our own. And I think that we have seen what that will lead to. Right? This moment is not just an indictment of the Republican Party. It's also an indictment of our own party that we've gotten to this point over so many years. It's not simply a recent issue where working people do not see themselves at the heart of our politics. And that's what I really feel from New Yorkers, is a desire to showcase here in this city not only the rejection of the values we're seeing out of the White House, but also a vision for what this city could look like that could then stand as an alternative to DC. Because for too long, New York City has been the answer for how we got Donald Trump, not what we could do beyond Donald Trump.
We all want that vision. We want to fight. The question is your party up for that fight?
That's what we're showing right now, is that it can be.
one of the most popular campaign policies you have is a rent freeze for stabilized units across the city. A lot of your critics have voiced concern about the policy, not just right-wing critics, arguing that it would drive up prices. It doesn't deal with the issue of supply. They argue that that policy would make an already tight rental market even more unaffordable, unattainable to those who live in market rate units. What is your response to that line of criticism?
The first thing you need is to have a housing policy that applies to all 8.5 million New Yorkers. Our policy to freeze the rent for rent-stabilized New Yorkers will quite literally freeze the rent for more than 2 million people. And it is also not an exhaustive list of our policy. It will be coupled with a dramatic increase in housing supply across the board. And that will be done not only by the public sector taking on the building of 200,000 homes over 10 years, but also by ensuring that the private sector can build at a new level. And it can do so through zoning and procedural reforms. Because what we've seen is that, while Jersey City is building 7 homes per 1,000 people, while Tokyo is at 10, New York City is barely at 4. And so we need all of these approaches to ensure that we're providing immediate relief and medium and long-term relief to a housing market that is currently has far too few houses that are actually being built.
What about
the
issue of supply?
This goes back to that. Is right now, when you ask a number of developers, what's the most expensive thing about building in New York City?
Yeah.
I've heard from many of them say the wait.
Okay.
It's not the cost of labor. It's not the cost of materials. It's the amount of time it takes for them to actually get to work. And that's why we've spoken about expediting the process by which those permits are actually being produced and going away from a piecemeal neighborhood view.
So you're a
approach.
progressive who's into Ezra Klein abundance, deliverism.
I've spoken
You
about
can do
it.
both.
I think that
Okay,
there is a
good.
real need for us to have a politics that both addresses the immediate needs of working people and builds towards a future that can address the long-term issues that we face systemically.
You've proposed
Makes
universal
sense.
childcare for New York City, a policy that Governor Kathy Hochul has also championed. She signaled her willingness to work with you on that front in a recent interview with New York Magazine before she endorsed you. She said, "We can't do a $7 billion childcare program in year one. How about over a longer runway? Let's do things in a smart way." Do you agree with that? Not year one, but we do it over a longer term, work with her? Or
I think that universal childcare is something that will take more than 1 year. And I think that the critically important thing is that we show New Yorkers significant advancements towards it until we fulfill that vision. And that's a vision we have to fulfill because the cost of childcare right now is $25,000 a year for a family, for one kid. And we've seen, New Mexico just rolled out universal childcare. We've seen in Quebec, they had universal childcare. They saw a 10-to-1 return on that investment. And this is something that I often take issue with, is that we typically focus on the cost of implementing universal childcare. We do not speak of the cost of not having it in this
Yes.
moment. Right? A few years ago, a study was done where we found that New York City was losing more than $20 billion in economic benefits because of the lack of universal childcare. The cost of implementing this, it's about $6-7 billion. It's significant, but it's actually much less than what we're facing right now.
you and Governor Hochul, though, have butted heads on taxing the rich. In that same New York Magazine interview, she said, and I quote, "Tax increases, I'm concerned, will have a negative effect on our ability to keep businesses here that I need to." You want to enact a higher corporate tax rate, I think New Jersey's level, I think is what you said. Governor Hochul is not on board with that. You've served in the state assembly. How do you get such a policy through if the governor and many of your colleagues in the state assembly are against raising taxes? Because they're worried that the billionaires will flee to Florida.
You know, I've found in my time in Albany that there is immense support for increasing taxes on the wealthiest New Yorkers, the most profitable corporations, so as to make a more affordable life for all. And I found that if you look at the Assembly and State Senate, every year they put out their vision, state budget, you'll find those tax increases within that vision. And I also will continue to make the case to the governor that these are the ways I think are the most productive manners in which we can raise this revenue to pay for this affordability agenda. Now, the most important thing to me is paying for the agenda. If there are other pools of money that are there that can be used towards that, great. I happen to think that these are the two most straightforward and direct ways that we can fund an agenda that would transform the most expensive city in America.
What about the argument that billionaires will flee? Do you really want to drive Bill Ackman out of New York City?
You know, I want, even Bill Ackman, I want him to stay here. It's because I don't want someone to be able to write a longly worded tweet from somewhere else in the country. I want them to be able to write. Calligraphy needs to live. And it can live right
I
here in
love
New
the
York
fact that
City.
only the terminally online people will
But I knew
understand
you were
that
here.
burn.
I knew that
I'm
was
here.
you.
I live on the internet, so I understand. Me and Bill Ackman understand that burn.
But in all seriousness, the Fiscal Policy Institute did a study of this question of capital flight, and they found that the top 1% of New Yorkers left at 1/4 the rate of other income brackets. And when they do leave, they leave to other states that are often described as high tax, New Jersey or California. So it is not actually about the fiscal policy that drives that flight. It is much more, in fact, about quality of life. And this is the case I've made to some of the wealthiest New Yorkers that I've met, is that the quality of life in this city cannot be disentangled from the question of whether or not we will fully fund our city services, right? You feel that lack of quality of life, whether in public transit, whether in sanitation, whether in our libraries, whether in the sense that this city is actually thriving. And so much of that will be at the heart of our agenda of what we pay for.
I mean, you can't have Scandinavian public services with American tax rates. That is fundamental disconnect.
That's a very good line.
You've pissed off the right people, Donald Trump, big corporations, the Democratic establishment. I would argue that these are forces that even if you win a landslide in November, will still not accept you and will do everything they can to undermine you, because as the Americans used to say during the Cold War, we can't have the threat of a good example down south. If you do well as a lefty, a progressive, a socialist, and we'll come to socialism, they will do everything they can. Donald Trump's already talked about cutting funds and sending in the military. I feel like they will try and do everything they can to make your mayoralty a failure so that they can say, okay, you got this guy, but look, it didn't work. Now let's get rid of the left for a generation. Do you accept that as a threat you face?
I accept that they will throw everything at us. They, especially being Donald Trump and his administration. And yet I also know that there are so many opportunities we have to deliver on this politics, irrespective of their threats. And we know that also their threats are a fact of life, no matter the orientation you take to Washington, D.C.
And delivery is key.
It is. And right now what you have is probably the most collaborative administration you could imagine in City Hall with regards to Washington, D.C. And yet even with Eric Adams, Donald Trump's ambassador right here in New York City, to quote Michael Blake, even with that reality, Donald Trump is threatening to strip the city of more than $50 million. Even with that reality, Donald Trump has taken $80 million out of a city bank account. And so we see that this raiding of funds, this detaining and deporting of New Yorkers as young as 6 years of age, a girl in Queens, right? This is what we're speaking about. This is with all of that collaboration. So we know that, in fact, we have very little to gain from continuing down this path, a path that Andrew Cuomo himself is showing himself amenable to with his phone calls to Donald Trump about this race. And so the question is then, what could we win if we were willing to fight for this city?
By the way, the S word is thrown around a lot. You self-define as a socialist, a word that scares a lot of Americans. How would you define your socialism?
I would go back to the words of Dr. King, who said, call it democracy or call it democratic socialism. There must be a better distribution of wealth for all of God's children in this country. And I think New Yorkers feel that in the wealthiest city, in the wealthiest country, in the history of the world, 1 in 4 New Yorkers are living in poverty, right? $2.90, the cost of one ride on the bus, of a MetroCard swipe. That's out of reach for 1 in 5 in this city. And yet we have become numb to these statistics. And it's time to actually confront them for the weight that they actually have in working people's lives and deliver something that they can afford.
You won just 8 out of the city's 33 majority black neighborhoods in June. Cuomo won 25 of them. Adams 4 years ago won all of them. Despite being a brown guy from Africa, you seem to do better, your critics say, with white voters than with black voters. What is your plan to turn that around before November?
Well, I think a lot of that is also the experience that we had at this table. When I came to you in the beginning, I was at 1% to be charitable.
Maybe. We may have rounded up.
Inshallah, 1%. And that was my experience running around the 5 boroughs of the city, introducing myself time and time again. And what I found is that I wasn't just running against Andrew Cuomo. I was also running against the legacy of Mark Cuomo, who many New York associated with.
What are you talking about, Zionist socialists? First of all, Mamdani is about as far from a Zionist as you could possibly get. So I don't know. You have to check your IQ.
I remember speaking with a pastor, and I was asking him, why did you endorse Andrew Cuomo? He said, I endorsed Mario's son because Mario was good to me. And what I found over the course of this race is in introducing ourselves, this campaign, this agenda, we have received more and more support. And I'm proud to say that today I am leading with black New Yorkers across the 5 boroughs. And that's indicative of the fact that this is an agenda that speaks to the crisis at hand, which is in many ways a reverse of the Great Migration. This city has lost more than 200,000 black New Yorkers in the last few decades alone, where I speak to pastors and they tell me that much of their congregation now lives in South Carolina because they just can't afford this city anymore.
Wow. By the way, on Andrew Cuomo, do you chuckle to yourself when he calls you a Nepo baby?
I do.
Mario Cuomo's son versus Miranai's son. New York Congressman Dan Goldman, a Jewish Democrat, has also said he will not endorse you until you take, quote, concrete steps to address the fears of Jewish New Yorkers. Are Jewish New Yorkers afraid of you? Do you feel the need to appease the likes of Dan Goldman?
I haven't seen his last post, Sam. Where, on like Twitter or Facebook? Like, where could I find that? Could you post that in the chat? Let me know.
I feel the need to live up to my promise to serve each and every person who calls this city home, and that includes our incredible Jewish population across the 5 boroughs. And I've met with Jewish leaders, be they elected officials, be they community leaders, be they rabbis, and I've spoken with them about their hopes for this city, as well as their concerns about living in the city. And when we speak about the rise in anti-Semitism, I often will have discussions around what we can do preemptively and the need to increase funding for hate crime prevention programs by 800% to more than $20 million, and how that can be helpful in tackling this issue in this moment. And I've also heard from them about a desire, for example, right now in the High Holy Days, to ensure that police protection continues to be a fact of life at their synagogues and their temples so that they can practice their faith without fear of their safety. And this is a critical part of what it means to serve this city.
According to a July poll from Zenith Research, you had a 17-point lead among Jewish voters in New York City, with a total of 43% of the Jewish vote in total. When asked about this on CNBC, the CEO of the ADL, Jonathan Greenblatt, said he doesn't believe the polls. And he said, you have not met with him.
That's true, I haven't.
Will you be meeting with him so he can vet you, I guess? Or is that part of your strategy?
No, I think there are far better representations of the concerns of Jewish New Yorkers than the ADL and Jonathan Greenblatt.
In our interview last year, you told me...
actually, I must add one thing.
Go on.
Which is that the other night I went for Rosh Hashanah services in Brooklyn, and I was with hundreds of Jewish New Yorkers, and it was this beautiful service. And at the end of it, as I was leaving, an older woman came over to me and shared a sticker that she had made. And it was a photo of a bagel, and it said, "Reject the smear campaign, join the schmear campaign." Jewish New Yorkers for Zohran. And
that's wonderful.
And I loved it, and I wanted to share that.
That's congratulations to that lady if she's watching. Great.
Yeah, Sam, I don't know what you're talking about. Most people will smear Zohran as an anti-Semite or anti-Israel. I haven't seen anything about him posting something Zionist adjacent or whatever. So that sounds pretty nonsense. I don't know. Anyway, I'll check this out later with you guys. I have to go. But nice chatting with you, Sam. Whoever you are, I wish you the best of luck, and I'll see you guys later.